No, no, I can. You are right. Hmm? When you will put it on at that time.
Sri Aurobindo is commenting on the fourth verse of the Kena Upanishad, the theme of which is the supreme word, the theme of this chapter. The text in Sanskrit goes thus: Yad vacha anabhyuditam yena vag abhyudyate tadeva brahma tvam vidhi nevam yadidam upasate. In Sanskrit, the word used, which Sri Aurobindo translates as the word with a capital W, is vak. And the first phrase goes thus: Yad vacha anabhyuditam. That which by the word is unexpressed. Abhyuditam, Sri Aurobindo has also commented, he says the word used here is means literally raising up to confront the mind. Brahman, says the Upanishad, is that which cannot be so raised up before the mind by speech. Cannot be expressed, cannot be placed before the mind by speech. But then the second phrase says, Yena vag abhyudyate, that by which the word gets expressed. There's something profound here. The idea that you could make any sound, speak any word, but it would not communicate meaning unless there was something deeper that infused itself into the word. That by which the word is expressed. The thing which fills the word, that gives to it meaning, power to create, power to manifest. But this has a double meaning, double sense on two levels. At the human level, it is that which brings the deeper sense, the deeper meaning, or the creative manifesting power of the speech. But at the same time, it means also that by which the word is expressed, meaning the Brahman who in his creative word manifests, by which the word is expressed in its highest sense, not just in the reflected sense of the human speech. Know that to be the Brahman. Tad eva Brahma tvam vidhi. And in the Sanskrit, there are nuances. Tad eva, that alone is Brahman. Tvam vidhi, you should know that alone is Brahman. And the word vidhi, it directly addresses to you. It says you should know. So tvam, you. And vidhi is a word which loosely translated would be know or having knowledge, but it has a subtler sense of discriminating, drawing out a deeper perception, separating. So when it says that tvam vidhi, you should know, you should learn to discriminate that is Brahman, as distinct from, what are you separating from? Nevam, not this, yad idam upasate, which this is sought after. Upasana is something which you pursue persistently, almost as a discipline, almost as an obsession, leading to some result, some outcome. But this which people pursue obsessively, this being the domain of the phenomenon, not this. Na idam yadidam upasate. Not this, which this is sought after obsessively. And so the sought after is normally the condition of humanity. We too, by instinct, by habit, are drawn to seek after this. And we have to learn to disengage and to discriminate. And so the word vidhi, suggesting not just knowledge but discrimination, points out that is also present here, but you must be able to extricate the perception of that from the perception of the phenomenon. And so the suggestion is, it is not an abandonment into some Brahman elsewhere, but the separation of the reality of Brahman, which is hidden or interwoven in or behind the phenomenal appearance. And it is towards this that the verse points. And then you can understand why the word, the second phrase, that by which the word is expressed. You can see how it has a very suggestive theme for meditation. When we speak, when we act, when we put out any vibration of energy to manifest, even silently in thought or in feeling, what is it that gives to it the power of effectuation? What is it that brings into it a real meaning, purpose, direction? Not merely the sound of vibration of air leaving our mouth, but the force that is infused in the sound, the force which can even carry when the physical vibration is not there and act to change things. And if we dwell, if we meditate on the very act of speech or thought, and try to discriminate what is it that gives it purpose, meaning, direction, force, manifesting power, we begin to discriminate the action of the Brahman consciousness even inside these casual forms. In this chapter, Sri Aurobindo has highlighted the importance of the word in the Vedic cosmology, and the word here is the creatrix. And now in the text we are reading, Sri Aurobindo is helping us to approach the deeper truth of this from something which we are more familiar with. In science, it is commonplace that sound has the power to create and to destroy forms. And so the thing we have to suppose is, behind all forms there is a creative vibration of sound. And we saw examples of this last time. Next, he shows how there is a relation of human speech to sound in general. And at first it seems as if the speech is only intended to represent some emotion, some thought, some experience. But then he says, but in fact, speech is creative. It creates forms of emotion, mental images, and impulses of action. And from this, the Vedic theory, ancient Vedic theory and practice, extended this creative action of speech by the use of the mantra. We saw the theory of the mantra in the Veda, that it is a word of power born out of the secret depths of our being, where it has been brooded upon by a deeper consciousness than the mental, framed in the heart, held in the mind, again concentrated on by the waking mental consciousness. And only at that level it reaches the surface mental awareness. Till then it's happening behind the scenes. And then silently or vocally it is released, thrown out. And then it does its work. I dwelt on the sense of the brooding, where deep within there is a certain concentration which puts into it a power. The root sound of brood is from the bro sound, which means heat. And I would like to connect this meaning to the theme we discussed already on Friday, the theme of tapas. That deep within there is a consciousness, not of the mind, supramental, a deeper consciousness, which broods on, infuses heat by tapas, by concentration, into the word of power. And it is that power then which rises and eventually is released in the form of speech, silent or vocal. And Sri Aurobindo says that it produces vibrations in the mental and vital atmosphere, which result in effects, in actions, and even in the production of material forms on the physical plane. And so the mantra although released with a certain mental vital formation, has behind it a power which not only creates mental and vital vibrational changes, but eventually leads all the way to the physical. This, of course, we see in its most abstract form in the examples of the creative, we would say, magical or occult power of the mantra. But then in the paragraph now we take up, Sri Aurobindo says this happens even now in our normal life in ways that we do not consider important. As a matter of fact, even ordinarily, even daily and hourly, we do produce by the word within us thought vibrations, thought forms, which result in corresponding vital and physical vibrations, act upon ourselves, act upon others, and end in the indirect creation of actions and of forms in the physical world. So there are two levels at which we have to recognize this description. The first, which is happening at a level that we are not fully conscious of. The second level, which is more conscious, is when you speak, your speech is influencing other people's thoughts or their feelings and influences their behavior. So obviously, there is a physical result. You give an order, the order is obeyed, disobeyed, or reacted upon, it still produces some effect, not necessarily what you had thought. It still leads to a whole change in the psychological state of things and people around. But the deeper sense of it is the effect of which we are not conscious. He says, even daily and hourly, ordinarily, we produce by the word within us thought vibrations, thought forms. Each time we have a thought, each time we put out a strong emotion, there is a vibrational result. The mother, I think I mentioned this last time, when she was asked, what is occultism? The mother said very simply, it was a child who had asked the question. She said very simply, every time you have a strong thought or an emotion, it goes out and does its influence. That is occultism. In brief, it is an action on a mental and vital plane as distinct from a physical plane. And that's why it is occult, because we do not see it. Daily, hourly, we produce by the word within us thought vibrations, thought forms. So there are two things here, vibrations of thought and forms of thought. In most human beings, the formative power of the mind is so undeveloped that thoughts do not have distinct forms. And so there is an impulse, more like a sentimental, emotional thought impulse, which is thrown out. Its greater character is of thought vibration rather than distinct thought form. If at all there is a thought form which has been developed, it is vague, cloudy, indistinct. In the aura, by clairvoyant sight, one can see the emergence of these thought forms. Generally, when it is a clearly formulated mental idea, it has a distinct form that emerges from the center of the forehead and drifts off like a form, a cloud, or if it's clearly distinguished, a clear object with a clear form, translucent, within which the colors, the forms, and the vibrational quality convey the content and the force of the thought. When it is not so clearly formed, then very often it drifts out like a cloud-like formation, like a gas, drifting out in this way like a cloud, vague, unformed. Or more often, it is simply seen as a change in the patterns and colors within the aura. And you will find a lot of literature from the Theosophical Society with pictures, paintings of how different emotions change the colors, forms, and create images within the aura. An angry thought and emotion, for example, creates strong, jagged forms, strong, bright red colors, streaks of colors often released in this way. On the other hand, jealousy has a greenish tint, or melancholy, sadness, pessimism has a darker grayish tone, a dulling effect on the colors of the aura, and so on. But the thought form carries within it those same colors. But the distinctiveness of the form here is what makes for a clear thought or a vague thought. Separate from the clarity of the thought is the force which is put out in the thought. So all of these are thrown out from us constantly, he says, daily and hourly. But it is an expression of the word, the creative vibration within us, expressed in thought vibration and thought form. Its effect, he says, is the result in corresponding vital and physical vibrations. So when you have released the thought, it has from the mind vibration, it influences the vital vibrations, which influence the physical vibration. And at that level, we may say it has a vital and physical effect, which is still invisible. But when it has acquired a physical effect, you can feel it by a little bit of sensitivity. So let's say a room where people have met, discussed beautiful ideas, inspiring thoughts, higher emotions and feelings. After the people have gone, the entire area is still imprinted with that vibration at a mental level, vital level, and even physical level. You can walk into the room and feel the vibration of those thoughts, or even at a physical level, the vibration of the clarity which it has brought. Automatically, your own thoughts become more clear, you have less congestion of emotional confusion, and even physically, you feel bright and light. There's a whole series of experiments by a Japanese scientist, I think his name is Emoto, where he has observed physically the effect of thoughts and emotions on the molecular structure of water. And it is here that we see the most obvious physical result. If you keep a little glass of water or just a test tube filled with water in a room where such a discussion takes place, the water obviously absorbs the physical vibrational effect of those thoughts and feelings. You can now take this water out of the room into a laboratory and go through a process of photographing its crystalline structure. If the room had positive vibrations, the crystals are clear, bright, distinct. If the room was full of negative vibration, negative emotion, negative thought, the physical effect on the crystal is to break the crystalline structure. It is no more symmetric, no more beautiful. Its outlines are no more crisp. They're dull, fragmented, and unsymmetrical. And this is the level at which you see the physical vibrational effect. And if this is seen in water, consider that our water is 80%, our body is 80% water. Inside each cell, it is water which holds the bulk of our volume. And so the vibrational quality of our thoughts and emotions, much more than imprinting the room where we are, they imprint the body in which these thoughts and emotions take place. And at a physical level, they strengthen or break the crystalline structure of the water, which obviously has its effect physically in the biological processes of the cells, which have their effect in the coordination and harmonious working of the cells, which leads to the harmony or disharmony of the organic working, which affects naturally our health in a positive or negative way. And so Sri Aurobindo says, these vibrations, vital and physical, act upon ourselves first, because we are putting them out, we are creating them. The first effect is on ourselves, then act upon others, because it spreads beyond us. And especially when a thought form is released with clarity, with force. In the domain of mind and even in the vital, distance does not matter. For the vital consciousness and the mental consciousness, as in dream states, you think of something and you're there in the dream. So in the mental consciousness, you can daydream and relive an experience that took place far away in a different location. The last holiday that you had in beautiful space in nature. And in the moment when you're fully engrossed in the daydream, a part of your mental consciousness is actually right there, experiencing that. And there is no sense of distance for the mental consciousness. It is instantly where it chooses to dwell upon. And so a thought form released in this way, or a strong emotional imprint released in this way, has an effect at once on those circumstances to which you have directed the thought or the feeling, irrespective of distance. It could be someone sitting on the other side of the earth. You're speaking on the phone and you can feel the strong energetic connection with the person. The energy is not traveling through the wire, getting bounced across satellites by radio waves. The emotional energy is connecting instantly. When the mind connects, the emotions follow, and you have even a physical effect of a warm feel good in the heart. But the connection of the mind and the emotions took place instantly. The physical conversation was only a mechanism to direct the mind to connect. And if at that moment you put out vibrations of goodwill, the person feels immediately or is affected even if he does not feel. Remove the telephone and you have the same result. You concentrate on something, someone, think positively, put out strong positive vibrations, and it has an immediate effect on that circumstance and person. If a strong thought formation is thus released, it can be seen by the clairvoyant sight drifting out to actualize itself. If directed to a person, it goes and attaches itself to the atmosphere, the aura of the person. If directed at a situation, it begins to exercise an influence on that situation. Eventually, the thought form loses energy, dissipates, or is contradicted by other thought forms. If it had a clear, distinct form, when it expends its energy, the thought form tends to return to you because it is still made of your mental substance and attaches itself naturally to you to draw on further energy, depending on the intention which was put on it. And you may not realize a series of intense thoughts that you put out a few days ago, the thoughts come back to you now when you are unconscious of them and leech on your energy. They suck energy because they need to reinvigorate themselves to actualize. And this is the reason why strong negative thoughts not only deplete us at that moment, but they continue to deplete us even subsequently because they come back and attach to our aura and continue to suck our own energy and then go out and continue to try to fulfill themselves, especially when the thought was clearly formed. Otherwise, it tends to dissipate and dissolve on its own. So there's a whole dimension of this action upon ourselves, act upon others, and end in the indirect creation of actions and of forms in the physical world. So indirectly having influenced the state of another person, a clear thought projects its idea into another person's mind, he picks it up, catches it, and then he thinks it's his own idea and he effectuates it. For no reason at all, the person feels now compelled to think of something or to act on it, not realizing that that thought form was put out by somebody else as a suggestion. Once it enters your own consciousness, after it has got in, it has already taken on the substance of your own consciousness. And unless you're very sensitive, you do not realize anymore that it is somebody else's thought which has entered. You claim it as your own and act on it because you have thought of it. If you are sensitive, you may feel the thought entering your consciousness. And at that point, it is possible to easily distinguish, oh, this is someone else's. By trying to feel the vibrational quality, you can even recognize whose thought it is, whose influence is coming upon you, or even what is the intention behind that thought which has been sent to you, the vibrational quality. Once it gets in and wraps itself with your own thought substance, it's much more difficult, but still possible to trace back while the link is fresh to its source, the thought energy itself. In rare cases, when a skillful person not just projects a thought, but projects a thought connection to try to feel what is in your mind, or to insert in your mind a certain idea or a certain state, you can feel the probe of that energy entering and putting a suggestion. And one can, of course, block it, cut it out, or push it back. And these things are used to be taught in many occult schools. The difference between the occultist and the common man is that the common man is unconscious, both of the influence he creates and the influence he receives, whereas the occultist does it intentionally, consciously. But the end result is action and form in the physical world, indirectly though. Sri Aurobindo continues this description, now broadening the scope of this influence. Man is constantly acting upon man, both by the silent and the spoken word. And he so acts and creates, though less directly and powerfully, even in the rest of nature. So first is this constant interchange among human beings, both by the silent and the spoken word. So the spoken word, of course, it's obvious. We talk to people, it has an effect. But the silent word is this influence of the thoughts. But constantly there are streams of millions of such floating thoughts and influences pouring through, wandering in the world. And every time that we walk through a crowd, we are picking up a whole clutter of these. They pass through our mind and pass on, or they latch on, they leave something stuck and imprint, or move on, or they latch on and stay with us. When we become conscious of it, we can feel the whole crowd of thoughts and energetic impulses when we approach a large number of people in activity in the marketplace. On the other hand, when we withdraw into the forest, into the hills, mountains, where there are less people, you find automatically the clutter of your own thoughts becomes less. And you think, oh, this is such a peaceful place. But it is simply because the clutter of thought forms that human beings throw out continuously is not so strong in that space. If suddenly a group of tourists comes into this mountain silence, you can feel the invasion of those thought energies and forms, especially if they have not tuned in to the silence of the space. But the reverse is possible. You can create a purified space where you meditate, in the room where you sleep or study, or in your whole house, where you clear it from all this clutter of thought forms and even create a kind of a barrier, a circle of protection that prevents the huge amount of noise and junk from the rest of the world from entering. But ignoring that, constantly these things are influencing each other. We're just not conscious. I am tempted to share an experience, which perhaps I've mentioned here. I was with a friend, a businessman who was very much into astrology, and he had discovered an astrologer who was extraordinarily accurate, almost making day to day prophecies, sometimes down to the hour. So my friend was very keen that I should meet him. And so we met, we were driving together in the car. And so my friend wanted to demonstrate the skill of this astrologer and said to him, "Okay, tell me," looking at this, pointing to me, "tell me what is his ascending sign?" So in the chart, normally, the ascending sign often can accurately describe the overall form of the body. So in my case, being tall, there are only two signs which could be ascending to give a body frame which is tall. So just as he asked this question, I was curious to see what kind of an astrologer he was. And so I put my own intervention. I put the idea, just the idea of the sixth sign, Virgo, and dangled it in front of him. So if he is a genuine astrologer, then he will cut through that rationally and go for something real. If he's someone who's just following an instinct or intuition, he may catch whatever is there strongest before him as an impulse. And as expected, the man just said six, the sixth sign. And my friend was very upset because this is something so basic in astrology that Virgo ascending sign will not be tall. So I said, "How can you say that? Come on, try again." So again, I dangled the same idea, six. Again, he caught it. You see, the man was not using his intellect at all. He was just trying to feel the air, and whatever he caught, he would present as his astrological observation. But this is the kind of influence which operates on us all the time. We don't even realize it. Somebody in the same room may have a thought. The thought wanders around, it finds in your mind a receptive base, it enters you, and you feel drawn to speak or act in that direction. And this is happening constantly in the interchange. But he says, less directly and powerfully, we act and create even in the rest of nature. And this is a part we don't always recognize. Where we have strong, chaotic thoughts, we affect nature and create in nature an influence of chaos and confusion. It acts on two levels, one which is purely vibrational and the other is where it affects even beings. So for example, there are beings who look after the proper process of rain, the formation of clouds, even the formation of dew or the growth of plants, the development of flowers. They can be seen, one can relate to them, communicate with them, but they are generally extremely sensitive, very subtle, delicate in their sensitivity. And most human beings have vibrations of thoughts and feelings which are far too harsh, too aggressive for them to bear. And so they tend to run away from human beings. If you come into a forest space and these little dwarf-like beings, they will just run away, they will hide, they're afraid of you, the sheer aggression of your vibrations. But if you become very quiet, completely still and calm in your thoughts, in your feelings, and even in your nervous vibrations, then after a while, gradually they begin to peek from behind the trees. And if you put out a vibration of love, welcoming them very gently, very subtly, they can gradually learn to get habituated and trust you and begin to come closer. Or you can make a request and they will even help or try to help. But the level of aggression is so strong around cities, for example, that these beings either don't like to come in that space, or if they are compelled to come because of the plants and trees there, they become agitated, they become uncomfortable, and their normal functioning of the rhythms of their working is affected. And this is the reason why around cities you will find the rains are not so stable, they're more often untimely, the temperatures are not steady. We can give to these things physical reasons, but in the logic, you will find the physical reason does not sustain beyond a point. You can argue both ways. What finally decides is the influences of these things. The mother narrates an incident where she was in the ship and there was a huge storm which was breaking out, and everybody was afraid that the ship might sink because the waves were really rising. And at that point, because she was traveling with her occult teacher, he said to her, "Go inside and act on this situation to calm it." And mother says she went to her room, she lay down, came out of her body, and she saw a very large number of these little beings dancing wildly, playing in the water on the waves, creating this agitation. And then she brought upon them, she said, "Peace, peace, peace." And as the vibration of peace spread on them, they became calm and quiet. Once she completed her exercise, she came out back to the deck of the ship, and everywhere it had become quiet. The wind had calmed, the waves had become quiet. When narrated in this way, only somebody who recognizes the occult truth of things will see how powerful and how true this is in all processes of nature. Our thoughts, our feelings, they act, though less directly and powerfully. They act and create, even in the rest of nature. There's another example I'm tempted to share here, is an experiment called the Global Consciousness Project, which measures the vibrations of a few select atoms inside, I think, 65 computers spread out over the world. And what it is able to measure is that every time a large number of people connect with the same idea or the same feeling, the vibrations of all these atoms become less chaotic. They are more attuned to each other, more harmonized. And even if there has been a natural disaster, an earthquake, tsunami, whatever form it takes, it is not the disaster and the suffering of the people which registers, but when people see this and share in a common feeling of concern, the alignment of people's thoughts and emotions at that moment immediately has the effect of reducing the randomness of these vibrations of atoms. But the experiment is measuring only a few atoms. It means everywhere on Earth, all the vibrations of all the atoms become less random. What that means practically is when humanity is aligned in a single idea, a single purpose, a single aspiration, a single prayer, a single feeling, all the vibrations of the Earth's atoms become less chaotic. Physically, it means that when there is an earthquake, the earthquake, instead of being a huge damaging movement, could be a series of more harmonized gradual releases without any destruction. The weather patterns, similarly, when they are more aligned and harmonized, will create clearer rhythmic weather than if they are chaotic and the weather becomes chaotic, does not take distinct form. So when people are aligned in feeling, in intention, the processes of nature physically, at their physical vibrational level, also are influenced. And this is physically measured by the vibrations of the atoms in this experiment. It is quite an extraordinary experiment for what it implies. There is a occult literature which also refers to how human beings' thoughts and emotions have an effect on solar flares. And the solar flares become more chaotic. There are more sunspots when people on Earth are agitated and emotionally chaotic. If we are more harmonized, even the sun's processes are influenced by this. And of course, these are cycles which feed upon each other. If you put out confusing energies, nature's activities become confusing. There are more earthquakes, more storms, which affect us emotionally, by which we throw out more negative energies, and the cycle just builds up. The reverse is also true. When we are happy, peaceful, loving, and joyous, the rhythms of nature's cycle also become more clear and positive, joyous. In the Indian tradition of the principles of administration, it is said that the measure that people are happy and the king is ruling well is that the weather is timely and the crops grow healthy. So it clearly articulates the connection between human states and nature's cycles. So man is constantly acting upon man, both by the silent and the spoken word, and he so acts and creates, though less directly and powerfully, even in the rest of nature. But because we are stupidly engrossed with the external forms and phenomena of the world and do not trouble to examine its subtle and non-physical processes, we remain ignorant of all this field of science behind. Sri Aurobindo refers to this whole domain of knowledge as a science. It's a whole field of science behind the appearances, behind the external forms and phenomena of the world. Behind are the subtle and non-physical processes. We do not see them because, he says, we are stupidly engrossed with the external forms and phenomena. Now, we tend to use the word stupid very loosely as a word of abuse. But Sri Aurobindo uses words very precisely in their deeper sense. And the word stupid is to be dull, to be in a state of stupor, where you're unconscious, unaware of things, loss of sensitivity because of dullness and inertia, particularly of the mind. And so from their lack of intelligence or inability to express intelligence. But the word here is very suggestive, stupidly engrossed, because we are dulled, and the dullness is engrossed in the surface phenomenon and external forms. We are unable to see the deeper truth, the deeper intelligence, the deeper subtler reality behind, which is a whole field of science. In the ancient times, because that was the primary focus, the field of science behind the occult domain, they gave that more importance. And they saw that all the physical, superficial processes could easily be manipulated by the action from behind. So they spent more time and energy developing that science than this science of the surface physical phenomena, which is the obsession of modern science. Although the knowledge was there, they found it not so interesting because so much more can be done by the action from the occult. So this is the point Sri Aurobindo is driving us to, that all the time we are using this same power which in the mantra is given a specific, amplified, direct action. And so he says, the Vedic use of the mantra is only a conscious utilization of this secret power of the word. And if we take the theory that underlies it, together with our previous hypothesis of a creative vibration of sound behind every formation, we shall begin to understand the idea of the original creative word. So now we're coming to a deeper understanding of the creative word by which the divine manifests. The theory that underlies this idea, together with the previous hypothesis of vibration behind every formation. So here, two things he's bringing together. This idea that the vibration of thought, of energy, by which we influence things, allied to the idea that there is a vibration behind every physical form. Bring these two together, and now suddenly you see a continuity. Our thought puts out a vibration, acting all the way to the material. Behind every physical form is a vibration which is of a level which is vital, mental, and perhaps even deeper. And now suddenly you see a continuity, and the whole power and principle of the word and the mantra begins to become clear. And now for this, Sri Aurobindo elaborates. Let us suppose a conscious use of the vibrations of sound, which will produce corresponding forms or changes of form. So we have used a vibration of sound, a mantra, and this is leading to a change of form or creates a form. Two things are possible. You can create a new form which was not there, or an existing form can be modified. And this we are seeing as a result in matter. But matter is only, in the ancient view, the lowest of the planes of existence. Let us realize then that a vibration of sound on the material plane presupposes a corresponding vibration on the vital, without which it could not have come into play. That again presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the mental. The mental presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the supramental at the very root of things. So here is the full chain. A physical form has behind it a vibration. This is possible because behind that vibration there is a vital vibration, which is possible because behind that is a mental vibration, which is possible because of a supramental vibration. Now he's saying it in this way. The deeper logic of it is not always obvious. Someone could say, why not? Why can't you have a physical vibration without a vital vibration? Why can't you have a vital vibration without a mental vibration? He says here only once, he says, vibration of sound on the material plane presupposes a corresponding vibration on the vital, without which it could not have come into play. Why? In the physical vibration, when you think about it thus, what is a physical vibration? An object moves, molecules move, a wave happens. Observe the wave in the ocean. The water rises and falls. The wave travels. If you observe the wave traveling in the middle of the ocean, you will find the water itself does not travel. The water can only move at a certain speed, the speed of the current of the water. But the wave itself travels much faster. Faster than the water. It can go at even a few hundred kilometers per hour. The water itself cannot travel so fast. The frictional force would slow it down very quickly. But the wave impulse is traveling. What happens to the water? The water rises and falls. So what is traveling, if you think about it? Nothing physical. Pure energy. Pure energy is the essence of the wave that moves. Similarly, when right now there is a sound, the loudspeaker's drum of paper vibrates and it moves the air back and forth. The vibration of the air travels 100 meters perhaps, but the molecules of the air have not gone all the way there. The air molecules have mostly been moving back and forth. It's the pulse of energy which is traveling across. And the pulse of energy can travel very fast. In the case of electricity, similarly, if you take a wire and the electrical energy is pulsated with AC, alternating current, the energy is pulled and pushed. The pulsation itself travels almost at the speed of light. The electrons in the wire are traveling barely 6 centimeters per second. But the energy, pure energy, has gone 300,000 kilometers per second. What is that pure energy? It is non-material. Energy, where is energy? It is not an object. It is not a thing. You can't grab it. You can't store it. You can use it to modify a physical process, but the thing itself is non-physical. Therefore, behind any physical vibration is a vibration of energy. And pure energy is life force. In its densest form, it can take a physical character of energy. Sri Aurobindo points out that electricity is the closest that you can experience in the physical world to pure energy. It is a densification of the vibration of life energy, prana. But that same energy operates on many other levels. For example, within you, you're feeling cold perhaps. Somebody comes and the presence of the person transmits an energy, and you suddenly begin to feel warm, energetic, well. You're sick, you're in bed, depleted of energy. Somebody comes with a strong vitality, and suddenly you feel energized. The transmission of energy took place, the same prana, but it took place at a level which was not physical, at the level of the emotional, vital energy. But it is still the same energy. No physical change is possible unless there is a shift in the vital energy. And that vitality entering me immediately perks up my physical processes. Now the heart beats more strongly, I breathe more clearly, the cells become more active, the metabolism speeds up, and the healing process speeds up. So behind every physical wave, there has to be an energy vibration. But behind the energy vibration, he says, there has to be a thought vibration. Why? Again, we could ask why. The fact is, a vital energy, or even a physical energy, especially at the physical level, you can see this clearly, the wave has a distinct form. It has a frequency, it has a pattern, it has a structure, it has a pattern of interactions, which we can describe with equations. What is the equation? It is not a physical reality, it is a mental truth. What is the equation capturing? A certain harmony of relationships, an idea behind. What makes the vital energy move across for a specific outcome? The idea behind which drives and guides the energy. It is that which directs the energy, otherwise, the energy would simply disperse chaotically, purposelessly. It is the mind's intention which directs the energy, gathers it, and puts it out for a specific outcome. If the energy is closer to the mental vibration, you can put a mental energetic intention. Closer to the emotional vibration, you can put an emotional intention, and the energy entering changes your emotional state. Closer to the physical vibration, you can put a specific outcome, and it will have a physical result. It is this which is behind many of the occult phenomena of psychokinesis, materialization, dematerialization, or bending of metal, and things like that. The intention behind of the mind leads, guides, directs the energetic process to its physical outcome. So behind any wave of energy, if it is to be a wave, if it is to have a directional, meaningful result and not simply disperse chaotically, is the guiding force of an idea vibration. So he says that again, vital vibration presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the mental. The mental is what gives to it a push, direction, originates the vital vibration. And the mental presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the supramental, at the very root of things. Again, we can ask why. What is mental idea which pushes the energy? A mental idea is a form of idea substance, mind substance. What gives to that form this shape? What holds in that form a series of possible outcomes? Let me give an example here. Suppose the idea is to play a game of tic-tac-toe. You put crosses and circles, and if you put three in a sequence, well, you have won. The intention in my mind is to play this game. In the intention is the specific knowledge of what is necessary to win the game, the specific details of the rules of the game, the variations possible. If someone does this, this is what I have to do. If he does that, this is what I have to do. A whole bundle of possibilities and the means to deal with those possibilities is held in this mind idea. You may go with a very simple idea. I'm going to play a game and I'm going to win. But behind that idea of winning is a readiness of all the possibilities that you would have to actually operate on, manipulate, work around to get to that goal of winning. That is all held implied. So when, for example, a person puts a strong mental formation for a specific outcome, let's say there is a whole thing happening, a discussion happening among people, and you put a strong formation for an outcome which is required. The idea that goes and influences people, it will influence them to tilt into that direction of the idea. But they may be discussing in 20 different forms. The idea is still able to modify itself to deal with all those forms and turn them towards this one idea. Sri Aurobindo describes in his diary notes called Record of Yoga how he puts a certain intention, a will, for a specific outcome. A bird is flying, he puts a will for the bird to change direction. The bird hesitates and then changes direction. He sees a mat which is on the floor. A young boy is walking by, and Sri Aurobindo puts a will that the boy should roll up the mat and put it neatly in one corner. Immediately, he says, the boy hesitates, looks at the mat, stares at it for a while, and then keeps on walking. And again, Sri Aurobindo puts a fresh suggestion, and this time the boy turns, hesitates, stares at the mat, goes up to the mat, rolls it up and puts it in the corner that Sri Aurobindo had intended. Now, if you see, in the intention that Sri Aurobindo has put, the details of how to roll up the mat, the details of how to get to the mat, all these are not held. The idea only holds essentially roll up and place. The specifics of it are implied in the idea. So every idea that we put has a general intention, but with it, a whole knowledge is held behind it of how to work itself out. Where is that knowledge held? It was not there in the formation of the idea. It is held behind at some other level which is implied, which we have not consciously thought out. And the idea as a bundle holds all these things behind it. That all the possibilities of how the idea can work out are held in the supramental status, where everything that could possibly be dealt with is already held in the idea. And that's why that is a real idea. The form of the idea is very simple, do this. But within that is implied the full knowledge of how to do this and how to vary all the possible, how to act depending on all the possible variations of circumstances. So mental vibration implies, okay, so the mental presupposes a corresponding originative vibration of the supramental at the very root of things. Everything starts there. Now, why does it start there? Because behind that, there is nothing. That is the thing which sees directly and originates the action. Now, the difference between this and that is described, but a mental vibration implies thought and perception, And the supramental vibration implies a supreme vision and discernment. So the distinction between the two is described. The mental vibration sees this and has a thought form for it. The supramental vibration sees in the totality and separates out this possibility out of the totality of vibration. Discernment, separating, cutting out to make distinct from the infinite possibilities. That is the power of the supramental. So supramental sees with the supreme vision. It sees the whole and all the possibilities within the whole. And then the discernment separates this one possibility from all the possibilities. And that, as it moves into the domain of mental vibration, takes on a perception, this only, and the thought form of this. So we complete the logic. All vibration of sound on the higher plane is then instinct with and expressive of this supreme discernment of a truth in things. And at the same time, creative instinct with a supreme power which casts into forms the truths discerned, and eventually descending from plane to plane reproduces it in the physical form or object created in matter by etheric sound. Thus we see that the theory of creation by the word, which is the absolute expression of the truth, and the theory of the material creation by sound vibration in the ether correspond and are two logical poles of the same idea. They both belong to the same ancient Vedic system. This then is the supreme word, speech of our speech. So this whole portion we will take up next time because we need to dwell on the full sense of it. But you see here the logic so simply stated. The supramental vision sees and then it distinguishes, and that vibration produces a rippling effect of vibration in the mental, which has a thought form and thought perception, which creates a vibration now in the energetic domain of the vital, which as an energy moves as directed by the thought and the purpose of the thought, which further creates vibrations on a physical level, which leads eventually to a physical outcome of a form or change of form. This whole movement from the supramental creative vibration all the way to the material is a single movement vibrating down all the planes of creation. And in its totality, when seen top down as a single movement, that is the supreme creative word. It is by such a creative vibration, seeing supramentally and creating supramentally, that the divine manifests the universe. And so the word, the supreme word, capital W, is at its highest a supramental creative faculty. But all of this we will explore in more detail next time. And then Sri Aurobindo comes to the theory of the seed sounds of the mantra, the root sounds by which certain vibrations on a higher domain have a physical effect, and there is a direct correspondence from the physical through the psychological to the spiritual by a certain vibration of sound itself. All of these are, after all, vibrations. So there would be certain vibrations on the higher planes, which we cannot fully reproduce physically, but would have an equivalent closest physical vibration. And if we speak those vibrations, it would immediately ripple out and have effects on the subtle planes. So this is the system or the knowledge of the root sounds, of which there is a very interesting discussion which we will be covering next time. And so this leads us to the recognition of the Brahman as speech of our speech, the original creative word, which even in our ordinary speech is somehow infused inside, though very diluted, though very distant, though very weakly, still it is there. And therefore, the great truths in the spiritual life, not to waste the power of speech, to conserve the power because it is a creative power, and when thus conserved, when thus intensified, it can be used very effectively to influence circumstances, to bring into manifestation a greater truth, and to change things in the world. We can meditate on this briefly.